This is Lived In, the interior design podcast for ordinary people living in ordinary homes. This season is called Voice Notes, an audio newsletter covering art, architecture, and one good piece of interior design advice. Let's get into it. Good morning, everyone. I hope that you all have had a good weekend and that your week is off to a good start. We'll see. I'm actually recording this and I will be honest, I am exhausted because I did not sleep well. And unfortunately, the only person to blame is myself. So I've developed this habit where if I wake up in the middle of the night and I cannot sleep, I read on my Kindle. Unfortunately, I think I've actually trained my body now to wake up and to not sleep for hours. So don't copy me. Don't be like me. Hopefully you had a great night's sleep. Anyway, let's talk about the art this week. The artist I featured in Friday's newsletter, I felt very appropriately, was British artist David Hockney, who passed away on Friday. And I've always loved his art, just the vibrancy of the colours, the playful nature of it. He was a huge contributor to the pop art movement of the 1960s, and yes, I felt it was appropriate to honour him on the day that he's passed away by including him in the newsletter. So make sure you take a look at the art this week. It is actually a newer work by him from 2021. Landscape with Shadows is the name of it. And it kind of is painted in a grid pattern with various colours and sections. Feels almost like colourful Joshua tree. That's how I'm going to call that. Anyway, take a look at it. Let me know what you think. Okay, time for another Not My Client space. And we're going to tackle a design dilemma together. So, if you have the newsletter pulled up in front of you, great. If you don't, pause, click in the show notes and open it up and you'll be able to see the image. But it's another one of those rooms from a Facebook group that I'm a part of where somebody has uploaded an image and really wants help with how to make it better, whether that be functionally or just visually. And I will go ahead and say I looked at this image and was like, ooh. And if you know what the ooh feeling is, then you don't even have to look at the image to know what I'm talking about. I think it can be easy or tempting, at the very least for me, to look at some spaces and feel overwhelmed, as if the only choice is to start from scratch. And that's just not a reality for everyone. And in a lot of cases, as you've heard me say before on the podcast, it can be really wasteful. You don't have to start from scratch in a space just because you struggle to see the potential in it. Especially if it's coming down to really a matter of taste. So, for those of you unable to look at the image, let me just describe it to you. Actually, I'm not going to describe it to you. Let me keep going through and then I'll get to the description. So as we look at this space, in much the same way as last week, I'm asking 3 questions. What are the challenges and limitations of the space? Where are there opportunities within the space? And how do we improve the design and functionality? So let's talk about the challenges and limitations of the space, and I'll describe the space a bit here for you. Number 1, it's really brown. Brown floor, brown cabinets, brown soffit, brown backsplash. Like, the person who designed this either really likes brown or they were just having a sale on everything brown when this was decorated. Another challenge is that it's very dark. It's actually quite challenging when you look at the photo to be able to tell what time of day it is because the space gets almost no natural light. Add to that the singular strip light in the middle of the ceiling, and it is no wonder that the space feels so dark. Additionally, it's lacking storage. the table that's kind of in the middle of the kitchen, the freestanding shelves, and the food stored above the fridge, all of those things suggest suggest that the cabinets in the kitchen are insufficient. There's not enough room. And then the last challenge and limitation I'll say that there is we're seeing so many things. We're seeing the trash can, we're seeing the dustpan and broom on the side of the fridge, we're seeing the drying rack on the card table that's blocking the drawers, because there's just not space for it elsewhere. And that's understandable, that's real life. Also, just to point out, there is a difference between space and storage. So that was the first question, what are the challenges and limitations? The next one is, what are the opportunities? So when I was looking at this space, I wanted to look at it from an affordable perspective, but also the most limited perspective. So what is the most limited a person can be when they're in a space? They don't own it. In that instance, it's a rental. So let's assume that this is a rental. In rental spaces, there is a limit to what you can do, but that doesn't mean that you can't change things dramatically. It's true that architecture and interior design are the bedrock of good design, but the way you furnish a space, the way you decorate a space can massively alter the way it feels and functions, even if you can't address the kind of deeper underlying issues with the architecture and interior design. So lean heavily into those. I've tried over the years to assign percentage values to kind of the levels of importance of these things. So the architecture, the interior design, and then kind of the interior decorating, if you will. And there are limits to things. It's hard to decorate around terrible architecture. You can't fake light, for example, when there's no natural light in a way that works when you're decorating. But there is still so much you can do even in a dark space. You can lean into the darkness and embrace the darkness with decorating. So I guess if we were to assign a percentage value, I would say maybe it's 50% architecture and interior design and 50% interior decorating. All the stuff that you kind of sprinkle on top, that interior decorating stuff, can have a massive impact on the way a space feels. So there are things we can improve. We can improve the light going into the room. We can improve that, even if it's just marginally. We can brighten the space with peel and stick wallpaper, because not permanent, but still brightening. We could even do peel and stick flooring if we wanted to, although a rug would work as well. We can change the freestanding furniture and opt for pieces that will enhance functionality, not hinder it, and look beautiful doing so. So for example, the card table I mentioned earlier is in the kitchen, but it's blocking access to drawers. So in one way, it's quote unquote enhancing functionality, but in reality, it's also hindering it, because if you need something in those drawers, you have to move that out of the way. It could be that the person who lives in this space never even uses those drawers because of the presence of the card table. We don't know. How can we improve design and functionality? Question 3. And the first thing I thought of was New York City apartments. I love watching Homeworthy, and I will link it in the show notes if you are not familiar with it. But I love watching how owners, and most of the time actually renters in New York City in really small apartments, capitalize on functionality in their spaces without compromising on design. So it's true that this kitchen, the one that we are looking at in the newsletter, is not nearly as small as many of these New York City apartment kitchens typically are, but there are still lessons that we can learn from those tiny kitchens and implement here, because New Yorkers are some of the best at making their small spaces work hard and look beautiful. So I included a few different images in the newsletter of small kitchens. All of them actually feel quite bright, especially compared to our subject image. But there are a few quick lessons that we can learn just by looking at these. The first one is to use every surface. Even a window frame is valuable real estate. Number 2 is that storage that isn't hidden is still storage. Just make it beautiful. Number 3 is that the right furniture goes a long way. Number 4 is that there's always more room in a space than you think. And number 5 is that when in doubt, just add charm and whimsy. It's actually not in one of these images, but when I say every surface is valuable real estate, I mean every surface. And when I say adding charm and whimsy, you can add charm and whimsy even in a space like the side of your fridge. If we have to look at it, you can do something to make it look better. So in the images I shared, every inch of the ceiling height is used, and there are things on top of things or behind things. And these are not minimal spaces, but they are enjoyable spaces and they don't feel cluttered. So that is a possibility with the right approach. So here's what I would do in our subject kitchen. First of all, I would lose the card table and the kind of office looking chair that is with it. It's blocking entry into the kitchen. It blocks the drawers behind it, as I've mentioned already. It probably prevents the fridge from opening properly. And I understand that we need that space. Currently, the person is using it to dry dishes. But to make space for drying dishes, you can use a roll-out drying mat over the sink once dishes are done, or an under cabinet over the countertop, one that's mounted kind of upside down, if you will. That could work too for drying dishes. So we're losing the card table. Next, I would lose the window treatment in its entirety. The colours in the window treatment don't match anything else, which obviously everything else is brown, but also it's blocking natural light. We want to get rid of that altogether. It can go away, we don't need it. Number 3, I would use a light coloured peel and stick wallpaper above the kind of side splash, if you will, backsplash. So in this kitchen, the countertop runs halfway up the wall. So it's kind of a backsplash in and of itself, but there is still a block of darkness from the brown paint on the wall. That's where I would put some peel and stick wallpaper. It wouldn't be anything brown, it wouldn't be anything dark. It would be something humble, something simple with a repeated pattern that would not interfere with the countertop. And I would use it around the entire perimeter above that backsplash. And depending on budget, I might use it on the kitchen soffit, which is also brown as well. Next, I would store unused pots and pans in the oven. New Yorkers do this all the time. You're not using the oven, just put the pans in there. That's space sorted right there. You can put other things in there too, not just pots and pans. You just have to remember before you use your oven to take them out. A genius small space apartment dweller hack, and it frees up the stove as well. Next, I would go through cabinets and drawers, and I may be wrong in saying that I don't think all of them are full, but I don't think I am. Decluttering and organising go a long way in increasing the look, sense and feel of a space. And a lot of times it's not that there's not enough storage, it's that the storage isn't being used well. So for example, if the cabinets have space in theory for those cereal boxes above the fridge, but the way that the shelves are organised limits how things can be stored, that's an opportunity to kind of go through, move shelves around if you can, and make those more organised so that there's more space. Next, I would lose the wire shelves, which are very utilitarian, and I would replace them with a tall hutch, as tall as we can get. Bonus points if that hutch is glass fronted. 1 for adding depth, 2 for adding kind of a bright fabric inside so it's not something that makes the space feel darker. Most hutches use kind of unpainted or just stained wood, which obviously is brown. But if it has a glass front, then a bright fabric can be run behind the glass to brighten and lighten the effect and reduce the feel of brown on brown in the room. That hutch could take all of the items that are on that white shelving rack and still go in that same spot that the wire shelving rack, currently occupies. But it would keep all of those things out of sight, more contained, cleaner looking, and more elevated. I'd get a light kitchen rug. It would need to be as big as possible to take up as much of the kitchen floor as possible. We don't want to see that brown tile anymore. We need something brighter. And some of you might be thinking, a bright rug in a kitchen sounds like a disaster, but it doesn't have to be a white rug. It could actually still be brown, which that might be controversial to some of you, but it could be a light brown like a jute. That would work too. You could do a peel and stick flooring, but that's a lot more laborious. I would add framed art in white mats on the soffit. Ideally, I would recommend the same shape and size. I'd space them out a little bit. You could also do something like plates instead. But here, having brightness, the white mat means that there is light, but it's not domineering, doesn't feel out of place. But you could, like I've said, do plates instead. And having that up top brightens the soffit area. I would remove the dustpan and brush from the side of the fridge, and I would replace them with either hanging pan storage or art, or both. We still need a dustpan and brush, obviously, but this is when I would move those so that they're not taking up so much visual real estate. Slide them somewhere else, like tuck them neatly between the hutch and the last bank of cabinets opposite the fridge, or move them to a different dedicated closet if there is one. Either way, don't let them be a thing that your eyes have to settle on. New Yorkers are great at adding art, like I said, on the side of a fridge, to something that's inspiring and makes it look charming and whimsical versus functional. Speaking of the fridge, I would also recommend taking the food on top from their bulky boxes, so that's cereal boxes if you're not looking. I'd recommend that they take the foods out of those bulky boxes, place them into baskets, and then put the baskets above the fridge. Cereals come in bags, they don't need to stay in the boxes. You can see what cornflakes are. Chips are individually wrapped, put them in a basket, put those on top of the fridge. Whimsy, charming, functional. Now, assuming the person living in the space actually really needs a chair and table in order to complete their tasks because of pain or illness or something else, then we can have a table, but it cannot be the boxy card table that prevents the fridge from opening. It needs to be something smaller. I personally like the idea of a small tulip table and a stool, or a very narrow, very square kind of wood cutting block. They're quite popular in provincial kitchens. I would have something like that in the middle, and a stool, taking up less space so all drawers and doors can still be opened. Now, some landlords are fine with paint, some are not. So that's why I said earlier the peel and stick wallpaper. But if a landlord is fine with paint, you can paint. Just be aware you may have to paint it back. And then lastly, I would swap the trash can for something cute, because if there's nowhere else to have it, if it needs to be on display, then we want it to be closed and you want it to be pretty. I linked to one in the newsletter. It's a Zara trash can, very cute. So that's what I would do with the space. Despite what the image might show us, with its kind of darkness and its brownness and its lack of space and storage, a brighter, happier, more functional kitchen is possible without taking a sledgehammer and ripping up tile. Even in a brown on brown kitchen, it's possible to have a place that feels light and feels charming. Let me know what you think. Okay, guys, I am a combination of sad and also slightly relieved because I need this break, but this is actually the last episode until August. It's going to be the longest break I've taken in probably the last 35 episodes. So thank you. Thank you so much for supporting me weekly. I will be back. We will be back. Make sure you have your notifications turned on that you'll subscribe to the podcast so that you get notified when the first episode is back. But for now, if you want to keep up with me, stay with the newsletter, and I'll also notify you in there when the podcast is back. Thank you so much for your support over the last few months, and I will see you in August. Take care.